Welcome to the Hold Maneuver podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Mike. We're two hardworking dads trying to immerse ourselves into Star Wars and fit it into our very busy lives.
This is your first time listening in this short-form Star Wars podcast. We'll share our thoughts on different topics from a galaxy far, far away.
Hey, Mark, what did Leia's adoptive parents say when she used to get sleepwalk as a child?
I'm not sure. What did they say?
Oh no, it's the rise of Skywalker.
Well, I guess The Force Awakens. All right, everyone, and we are back this week with another episode covering the third part of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and this week we have a very special guest with Mr. Adam Frazier. Welcome, Adam.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome.
Yeah, we kind of said this off mic, but Mike,
he wants it recorded.
Yeah, I want to record it.
I've been told Adam is a veritable Star Wars expert, and if I had to rank the people on the show right now, Adam would be our PhD masterclass. Mark would be having a bachelor's degree, going for a master's degree, and I'd be that kid in kindergarten putting paste in his butt, trying to see how it tastes. That's the level of expertise we're dealing with here.
Eloquent.
I'm not ashamed
In its brevity.
Yeah, so we just want to set expectations up top at the beginning of this episode for everybody. So I guess kind of segue from there, you were at Star Wars Celebration this past weekend in Anaheim. I went the last time, or I guess the only time I went was back in 2005 to Celebration 3.
Oh wow!
Was this the first one that you'd gone to, or have you been to multiple ones?
This was just the second one. I went to Orlando in 2017. It was great. I'm just extremely tired.
Yeah.
You know, I went to California. I walked like 20,000 steps a day for 7 days straight, and didn't do a whole lot of relaxing. But it was super fun. We took a few days before Celebration. My wife and I, Marissa, and went to Los Angeles and went to Disneyland, and finally went to Galaxy's Edge for the first time and got to experience that. So it was a whole week of Star Wars craziness.
Yeah, I still want to get to Galaxy's Edge sometime soon. We're trying to plan a trip to Orlando for later this year. So ironically, even though I live closer to Disneyland, I'll probably visit Batu East before I visit Batu West.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm in North Carolina. I assumed that my first trip would have been to Orlando, but it turned out to be to Anaheim. So I guess that's
so we did it the opposite way.
Yeah.
The only thing I have from there is this podcast is just audio this week, but I have a hat someone picked up for me a few years ago when they went. So that's my bit of Galaxy's Edge.
Gotta use more adjectives, Mark. You gotta use them.
Yeah. You know, it was funny. I was surprised. I did get a couple of like plushies. I saw a plushie of Watto and Jabba that I couldn't resist. And then we did the Droid Depot deal where we built a droid, which was super fun. But really, I was surprised at how much I wasn't interested in a lot of the merchandise, because it is really geared toward kids. And, you know, I think Disney lovers first and foremost, more so than just, you know, Star Wars fans per se.
That raises an interesting point, and I've always thought this. Since Disney bought Star Wars and kind of made more mainstream, I've felt like you have Star Wars fans and Disney fans, and nobody really believes me. And I'm like, I could walk up to someone in a Star Wars shirt and ask them a question and still get called a nerd because they're just a Disney fan. Like, nobody like in my family is like, it's all the same. I was like, no, it's not. Like, you don't understand.
Yeah, and there's hardcore Disney people that are now more so interested in Marvel and Star Wars because they're brought into the Disney family and they're part of that, you know, park experience.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say Celebration was, you know, crazy. Went to a lot of panels, stood in a lot of queues. But thankfully with the lottery system, you know, I didn't have to sleep on concrete again and stand in for 24 hours and stuff. So that was nice. But overall, it was a great experience meeting a lot of people from online. And yeah, it was just a super positive atmosphere as well.
Nice. Yeah, I've shared this story before kind of briefly, like I guess in our show trailer, but my wife and I, who was then my girlfriend back then, we had only been like dating for like I think like 3 or 4 months at that time. Uh, said that she would go with me, drive from New York State to Indianapolis, Indiana, to where Celebration 3 was.
Wow.
She hadn't ever seen Star Wars at that point, but she was willing to drive all that
Little
way
did
with
she
me
know.
to go to the 3-day Star Wars or convention in a different state, just because I wanted to go. And yeah, so I was like, well, this lady's
This is me.
Yeah. But yeah,
You forgot the most important part of that story. You
There's
had
also-
hair and you had it styled to look like Anakin.
yes.
Oh my.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I talked about this on our friend live action Star Wars when I went on their show for the Revenge of the Sith discussion. I talked about how when I had hair, I grew it out to be basically the same length as Hayden Christensen's Anakin haircut in that movie, and then I had it permed to be like his like wavy hairstyle he had in that. But yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, that's how much I dug into Star Wars back in 2005. But no regrets. But from there, you know, we're gonna segue into talking about some of the. So last episode we talked about like this first part of all this news that came out of Celebration.
Yeah. Okay.
This is kind of the remaining news that we didn't talk about last time. So the first bit that I think I got what we didn't get last time in this, but the first bit is going to be about the second season trailer that they released for the Bad Batch. I know Mike has not seen the Bad Batch.
I'm behind on that.
Yeah. What did you think of the trailer, Adam?
I thought it was tremendous. I really enjoyed the first season of the Bad Batch, and I can't say I was super interested in it beforehand.
That's been my issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Clone Wars and I love Rebels, but the idea of going back to maybe clone stories, I wasn't completely sold on it to start with. But the moment I saw the first episode, I was like, wow, this is actually kind of my ideal Star Wars, because at least right now I'm in this place as a Star Wars fan where I'm wanting less Jedi Force stories and more just sort of stories about regular people in the galaxy. What I find with Bad Batch that's really interesting is, even though there are a lot of cameos from characters, like young Kanan is in the first episode, it's really less about the Force and things like that, and it's very heavy on smugglers and bounty hunters and all the kind of scum and villainy characters that I love. So I really enjoyed the first season of Bad Batch, and I think the animation is awesome. The way it's evolved from Clone Wars to Rebels, and then, you know, Clone Wars season 7 really upped things. And I thought Bad Batch was just really gorgeous in terms of its animation, just the lighting and some of the like water textures and things like that. It's just very impressive. And so with this trailer, I was excited to see that evolution kind of take a step further. I mean, I'm not sure how much time has passed between the seasons, but clearly there's been a year or two, enough for Omega to kind of grow some. But they all have new looks. The animation looks, it's very vibrant. There's some like very interesting worlds shown in the trailer, like another sort of tropical planet with giant crab creatures and stuff. So yeah, it looks great.
Okay. Mike, here's the elevator pitch to you to watch Bad Batch. Think of Ninja Turtles, but as clone troopers.
Yeah.
Which Ninja Turtles?
The main four.
No. Which version of them?
Because
if you tell me Turtles in Time, I'm not watching it.
the 80s cartoon.
No, I watched the trailer and I'm interested. It's something I want to watch. It's just, it never piqued my interest more than something else, so I never watched it.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting that a lot of times when Star Wars introduces a new sort of story thread, it it can kind of feel inconsequential, like you don't really know, okay, well, this is cool, but does it really matter? And then they make it matter. They keep it to things to where it's essential. And, I think if you look at the way that the prequels have been revised for the most part, for a lot of people that have give them a second look, it's mostly because of the Clone Wars building interest in that time period and filling in the gaps of the characters and things like that, that they actually improved the prequels if you took the time to watch the Clone Wars, etc.
Right.
Bad Batch is kind of serving as this interesting bridge between the prequel era and what we've got with Rebels and Rogue One, this sort of, and Solo, this very original trilogy. So it's just always interesting when they explore a new sort of time period and they work their way forwards and backwards from it.
Right. Yeah. And then I love, same with Adam, I enjoy when it's not about the Skywalker saga characters. When you get like Rogue One, yes, you had Darth Vader at the end and Leia in there at the end, but for the most part, it wasn't about people you really knew.
Yeah.
So I can see myself liking Bad Batch. I just have to fit it in there with all the other content I got to watch.
And it's so crazy too that I feel like it's also at this hand in hand with sort of what the Mandalorian shared universe is doing, if you will. They're both introducing these threads that are sort of strengthening and underlining the sequel trilogy as well, by exploring clone experimenting and things like that. So I'm very interested to see how Bad Batch ties into the end of season 1 of Bad Batch. Really sort of suggests some involvement with Grand Admiral Thrawn. So it will be interesting to see how that carries over into live action with the Ahsoka series, which will also feature Thrawn. So it's interesting how they've made it all connect.
Yeah, we talked about this slightly last time, where that Sabine had been cast finally for the Ahsoka series, and then Chopper is going to be confirmed to be in there now, and then Hera is going to be in there too.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm just waiting for them to announce that they're going to have Zeb in there too. And then just like imagine like what he's going to look like in live action.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about Zeb yet, but it for all intents and purposes, it does seem to be the live action Rebels sequel. So
yeah, and I'll eventually get you to watch it, Mike, too, because we're gonna once Ahsoka and all that starts coming around, we're gonna have to do some rewatches so that I can introduce.
I just got done with Stranger Things, so TV's kind of light right now for me. So there's hope.
Well, this is where the fun begins. But speaking of Ahsoka and animated or animation, the Disney announced the return of Ahsoka and Qui-Gon Jinn in the new animated series Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. And I'll let Mike kind of take the little bit of this news to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, they announced it. They didn't say much about it, but they did announce that they're going to kind of go back and look at Ahsoka's origin there. You have her, what's believed to be her mother in the shot there. I'm trying to open the link. It's not working. Hold on.
No worries. But yeah, it's basically like an anthology series. It's gonna be coming this fall.
Because you have, and it's all voice, so we're gonna get Qui-Gon, Liam Neeson away from the Taken crap and back into something that matters.
So this is really interesting because I'm not sure if you've talked about Tales of the Jedi previously or sort of where it first popped
not with
up.
Me, at least. This is the third episode, so not with me.
Back around Christmas, there was a photo going around of the Lucasfilm gift that all employees got, which was I think it was a 45 record player, like a suitcase style. And the box that it came in, it had all the shows, sort of the current working projects. You know, it had Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Visions, Obi-Wan, etc. And then it had this logo for Tales of the Jedi, and everybody was like, what is that? And immediately it was sort of suspected that it was a new animated series, because we had kind of heard that something else was in development there. So that's sort of where the buzz began on Tales of the Jedi. And then right before Celebration, I guess some news was going around that it was going to be a kind of an anthology series, but we didn't really know much about it. And I went to the panel at Celebration, and it was really interesting how Filoni said this project came together. Basically, it's 6 episodes. 3 of them are going to be focused on Ahsoka, and 3 of them are going to be focused on a young Count Dooku.
Interesting.
And they're shorts, so they're probably like and we got to see the first episode of Ahsoka's at the panel in its entirety, and I would say it was somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes.
Okay.
So each short's going to be around that length, and they just tell these kind of one-off stories at very pivotal moments in each character's life that we haven't seen before in Clone Wars or what have you. So the episode we saw with Ahsoka was her being born, and who her mother is and where she comes from, and how they discovered that she is potentially, could be a Jedi. And it was awesome. I mean, it was so good. And the animation was fantastic. It's in terms of the style of the animation, it's definitely in line with Bad Batch, but in terms of the visual storytelling, it's very minimalistic. There's not a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of like atmosphere and mood. It really felt like Filoni kind of channeling those Kurosawa vibes in animation in the same way Visions really did as well. So we saw that first episode, and then we saw a trailer, and the trailer was super cool because it shows young Count Dooku with Qui-Gon as his Padawan. And we see how Count Dooku essentially falls from being a Jedi. That's something that's kind of, it's talked about in the prequels, but they gloss over it kind of quickly, that he's one of, I think it's the Lost 20 or something like that, that he's one of these that willingly left the council because he disagreed with them. So we are going to see that trajectory for Count Dooku. And yeah, Qui-Gon is back as a Padawan. And I believe, if I heard Filoni right, he did mention that Liam Neeson would be voicing the character in some capacity, but he also said that Liam Neeson's son would be voicing the younger version of him.
So that makes sense.
So that's pretty cool. And I'm assuming that, it's all the show's already done. Filoni basically teased us and said that we could have watched all 6 because they're already already.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it looks like it's going to be another kind of exciting thing like Visions, where every year we get some anthology stories about different characters. In this case, specifically Jedi. I'm sure Filoni wants to do a Plo Koon series. Yeah.
There was like this book series like years ago. I don't remember what it was called, but like that's where I remember like this whole storyline was where I think it was like about legacy too, and like the cover was like Yoda with Dooku, and then like Dooku with Qui-Gon with Obi-Wan, and then Obi-Wan with Anakin on the cover, with kind of like the story that with Anakin and Obi-Wan, but it like parceled back all the way through like the different like.
Oh yeah, like, that sounds familiar.
I don't remember what it was called though. I just remember I bought it and my son read it like years ago from like a book fair. But like when I first heard about this, I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll finally get to like see kind of like this ton like done individual story.
Yeah, and the trailer showed Windu, and I'm pretty sure Yoda was in there, and I'm also fairly sure that Yaddle was in there, which got a big round of applause in the auditorium.
So maybe we'll see how Yaddle and Yoda made Grogu.
Or I'm assuming how we will learn maybe why Yaddle left the Jedi Council, because I guess that's a thing with her is sometime between episode 1 and 2 she drops out of the council. So
it's because Yoda didn't want to pay child support for Grogu. she was like, well, I'm out. But yeah, with all those references to Visions, that actually got announced that a season 2 that's going to be coming out soon as well too. It was I think believed that it was going to be coming out this fall, but now it's going to be coming out in the spring of next year. And the little bit of the difference between the I guess volume 1, season 1, and season 2 of this is that where season 1 was all like Japanese anime based, season 2 is going to be kind of spread out more like around the entire world with like cultural influences from other countries like Spain, Ireland, and India, and like how those different cultures and have like their own takes and stories connected to this same galaxy far, far away. So like the same way, like we kind of brought up like Kurosawa with Star Wars. So it should be interesting to see like what they're going to be doing with season 2, with how the anthology series is going to, like have like the Irish influence on
right. I
Star
immediately
Wars
thought of like the Wolf Walkers, that style animation. Is that what they're getting at with a Star Wars short inspired by Ireland? It's interesting. Spain, Ireland, India, they referenced. It'd be cool if they did like an Italian, like they literally did a spaghetti Western version of Star Wars. That'd be interesting.
That'd be cool.
The Bollywood one with a dance sequence.
Yeah, they could totally do that. That would be crazy.
Get Liam Neeson for the Ireland one too, and just have him play a different character.
Yeah. So yeah, that's exciting. I really liked Visions, and I think it's cool to keep it out of the canon and let people just fully explore the universe and tell the stories they want to tell, and not be constrained by having to fit it into the already somewhat complicated timeline. So
yeah, it's cool to have like basically the just like, I guess more or less, for a lack of a better term, like a Star Wars what if series kind of sort of.
Yeah, totally.
But to kind of segue into our last bit of news, that's going to lead us straight into our main topic this week, was that back last week on late Thursday night, early Friday morning, when they debuted Obi-Wan on Disney Plus, it scored Disney Plus its most watched premiere ever. I'm trying to find the like exact number on there, but you got to. Did you get to see? I know that they showed it there at Celebration. Were you in the crowd that got to see it?
Yeah, when I was lucky enough to get one of the lottery passes to the studio showcase panel. And so we got into the panel, and when they let us into the room, they were giving out this extra wristband. And I was like, well, that's weird. I don't know why we need a wristband, because, I have a badge on and I got a QR code in the app. So I don't know, what this is for. And then we get through the panel for the Kenobi segment, and they say, when you came in the door, you got a wristband. Tonight at 7:00, that wristband gets you into the world premiere of Kenobi. So we came back around 5:30 and got in the queue, and we got to watch the first 2 episodes, and it was, it was wild. We were, watching new Star Wars with, 1,000 crazy Star Wars fans is
that energy had to be crazy.
I'd highly recommend it. But at the same time, as soon as it was over, I was like, oh God, I don't know if I retained any of that. So I have to like watch it again immediately.
You're too hyped.
Yeah, there's so much going on. It was quite the experience, and man, I was really quite blown away by it. I was expecting it to be very good, because I just think Deborah Chow's episodes of Mandalorian were great, and I'd been following a lot of the spoilers and stuff because I'm hopelessly addicted to stuff like that. So I had sort of been keeping up with what was going to happen on the show. And even still, I was just really impressed by the execution of it. I thought, just the cinematography and the storytelling and the acting and just all the little subtle nuances of it just worked so well. So I totally get why it's the biggest draw for Disney Plus, because it is dealing with something that whether older fans want to admit it or not, the generation that grew up with the prequels, they love those movies, and Ewan's portrayal of Obi-Wan is just as important, if not more so, than Alec Guinness's to a large group, a large portion of the fan base. So can definitely see why it's been so popular.
Well, didn't Guinness also like not believe in Star Wars? He kind of didn't have much faith in it.
Yeah. He just thought it was sort of a silly little kids thing, and he didn't.
Ewan is just like all in.
Yeah, and I think if and Alec Guinness too was sort of maybe perturbed that that's what he would be remembered for instead of Bridge Over the River Kwai and so many other great films and performances. But it's great to see that Ewan and Hayden as well are able to come back to Star Wars and feel truly appreciated by the fans. Whereas I don't think, even though people did like Ewan's performance when those movies came out, I think they were more harsh on the films than they are now. So I think it's just nice that they can enjoy that second chance.
Yeah. And I'm glad that it's kind of having like a renaissance of people going back and kind of reevaluating the prequels at this point. And that Disney Gallery series, that especially with like how Filoni speaks about and kind of breaks down different scenes from the prequels, in that does a great job of helping to boost to that. And he's a more or less a great heir apparent to George Lucas with the way that he does his storytelling. And
absolutely,
he's kind of more or less like the last, well, I mean, not as far as like someone that's still like in charge of like storytelling, he's like the last one that like really worked side by side with George Lucas. So it's
yeah, absolutely. And it was so interesting, this celebration. Last celebration I went to was the big push for The Last Jedi. So the panels and the topics and the filmmakers involved at that celebration were more varied. There was Rian Johnson, and then at the same time there was some discussion about Solo was starting, and you still had Episode 9 looming at that point with Colin Trevorrow. Whereas this time around at Celebration, it really felt like, man, if it weren't for Filoni and Favreau, we wouldn't have anything to show you. Because there was zero talk about movies. Not a single movie was really talked about. In fact, it was almost like they were going out of their way to not talk about it, whether that be because there's been production issues or what have you. We know Rogue Squadron's kind of been pushed around and delayed here and there. The chatter on Taika's movie is interesting because he's a very busy guy as well. And when that movie will come to fruition, we're not sure. And so they focused instead on all of their Disney Plus shows, and then Willow and Indiana Jones 5, which I thought was interesting. But Favreau and Filoni are to me the guys. In the pyramid, it should be Kathleen at the top, handling the business and letting Filoni and Favreau do the creative and take it from there. Patty Jenkins is great, and I'll watch Rogue Squadron. Taika Waititi's great. I'll watch whatever he does. But after watching these shows, Deborah Chow, Rick Famuyiwa, Bryce Dallas Howard, to me, these people are the future of Star Wars, and they've already proven it. Even Peyton Reed, who does Ant-Man, and then he comes in and does some amazing Mandalorian episodes. I'd love to see a Peyton Reed Star Wars movie. I think there's a lot of people that are proving themselves in the live action show space. Filoni as well. He's getting there. I want those guys to be directing movies going forward. So,
and I'll be curious. I'm more curious now about John Watts's Skeleton Crew show with Jude Law as well too. Now, I saw some people speculate that Jude Law might be Thrawn in that too. So that,
well, yeah, that's interesting. So my friend Jordan Mason, who writes for Cinelinks, he had kind of broke the news on this series a while back. I think, or was part of breaking it when it was kind of going by its production title, which was Grammar Rodeo, which I think is like a Simpsons reference.
Yeah.
But so what was interesting is when I first heard about this show, I was told it was set in the High Republic era and that the kids were like Jedi Padawans. And even going that far back, there was discussion of Jude Law being in the show and being this kind of the guy who gets stuck babysitting them on this mission. But to hear that officially, you know, from the convention that it's set post Return of the Jedi in the Mando verse, that was extremely surprising to me. So I wonder where that will fit in, and you know, are those kids force sensitive? You know, would be Jedi students for Luke or what have you. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the series Rangers of the New Republic that was originally announced that isn't happening, it looks like this has sort of slid into its spot to continue the shared universe.
So, well, that's going to do it for our news segment this week. We'll be back in a moment. First, you're going to hear a brief review from a familiar voice again this week about part 3 of the show. And then after that, we'll be back to discuss part 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hello there. Like I said, this is where the fun begins. Episode 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi was very good. We're at the halfway point, and I'm liking what I'm seeing right now. Vader, Vader, Vader. I love it, and I want more. We're going to see where Obi rises from his lowest point to that battle we're going to see inevitably in episode 6. So I can't wait to see more of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
All right, and we are back. Thank you, Vector, for sending in the listener voicemail about and your review for part 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So with
how
that,
dare you say that about Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah, I know that's not nice. But we'll have to see if the three of us agree with your takes on the episode as well. But yeah, so I think I'm probably the one that watches the closest to us recording tonight. What time, or like how early in the day did you guys get a chance to watch this episode?
I didn't get to watch it this morning. Usually I try to get up at like 5 or 6 and watch these when they come out. That's what I did with Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, but just coming back from LA and Celebration and having to go back to work, I didn't get this one this morning. So I watched it around 6 p.m. Eastern. So
same. I tried to watch it this afternoon and then we had massive power outages. So kind of put a damper on that one.
Nice. Well, I guess technically I watched it at the same time, my time, because I watched it 6 p.m. Arizona time. But yeah, so I guess what the best place to do is just start from the beginning. Now, so this episode starts with Darth Vader on Mustafar in his bacta tank. Now, what did you guys think about like this whole opening with like seeing Anakin / Vader basically
getting put together?
Yeah, and in his castle on Mustafar.
This was absolutely bonkers. This whole episode was bonkers from top to bottom. And I know it may not seem that way to some people, but like in terms of the sheer amount of ridiculous things I never really thought I would see happen in Star Wars, they all seem to be happening here at the same time. And and right off the bat with the bacta sequence, which, you know, is it's taking the stuff we saw in Rogue One a step further. Mm-hmm. I was just like blown away by it. And like Vader sitting in his crazy throne with like the like hologram thing in front of him. I mean, it was so metal. It was like something out of a Meatloaf cover art, you know?
Meatloaf cover art.
It was so awesome.
Yeah, this whole scene was like really interesting. Like you know, segueing in between like Obi-Wan on the transport. You hearing like little audio clips, like of like Hayden from Revenge of the Sith. You hear a little bit of Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon in there. Just kind of like these flashbacks that Obi-Wan's having in his head at the same time you're seeing Anakin Vader being like put back together, and you can see like his like just like how basically messed up his body is,
how he shouldn't be alive.
Yeah.
Oh, it was very creative. Like, just I didn't think they'd even show it because they kind of covered him getting put back together at the end of Revenge of the Sith very briefly, but I think they went just darker with it, which I like. I like when they go darker with things and made it more visceral, which was good.
Yeah. And then now, like this whole episode, I guess we can kind of like jump around a little bit. Like later on, Obi-Wan has like this brief vision of like a hooded figure on the horizon, which is just straight up Hayden Christensen as Anakin.
Just bonkers. Like, what? It was so crazy. It was like something you would see in I thought of the sequences from maybe a random reference, but like Passion of the Christ, whenever they would show like Satan, they were always like in the distance with like hooded and surrounded by like cacti and shit. Like that's sort of what this looked like to me. It was so crazy. And it also felt very much like the scene we see of Anakin standing on the balcony on Mustafar, where the tear is coming down his eye, you know, that sort of just standing with his arms crossed kind of look. So that was crazy too.
I thought this was like really interesting. My son, he's like, "Who was that?" And I was like, "Oh, it was Anakin." So I'm wondering if this is how like we see like quote unquote like Anakin Hayden in the show, or like in this way. But because I know people were speculating or assuming maybe that we'd get like Clone Wars like live action flashbacks, but I almost think that we won't now, and it'll just be more kind of like this, like almost like this haunting figure of Anakin that's just kind of following Obi-Wan around, more as almost not as like an actual, that's not like actually Anakin like projecting himself with like the Force or anything, but like just like Obi-Wan's guilt and
right. It's interesting. It's not a Force ghost, but it's like Anakin manifesting as this, you know, this ghost to Obi-Wan that's like his, you know, his past tormenting him because he failed. And I do think we'll see I think we'll see some Clone Wars flashbacks. I don't know to what length, but I think opening the show on a Clone Wars flashback the way they did with episode 1, I think there's still some unresolved things in that era that they're gonna have to expand on. But the stuff with Vader at the beginning was impressive, and him essentially instructing Reva, promising her the position of Grand Inquisitor if she kind of hunts down Kenobi, which I thought was interesting. And also, you know, I know we just have to be patient and wait for things to play out, but having the Grand Inquisitor stabbed last episode and not covering it at all in this one was an interesting choice because, you know, we know from Rebels that the Grand Inquisitor is still around. So is he in a back to tank somewhere or sort of what's the deal there?
I almost wonder if that's going to be like
that last episode.
Like if that's going to be like maybe it'll be like I know Star Wars doesn't really do tags, but like maybe that'll be like something that's like at the end of the 6-part series, and you just like see like him like in a back to tank like in the back somewhere, be like, oh, he's in cold storage until he needs to take on the Ghost Crew in a couple of years,
right?
Or maybe they'll clone him because, you know, that's something
they can do that.
They'll clone him and elongate his head so people stop complaining about it. But now, like, I didn't recognize this voice at first, but I'm assuming you two did, or if you didn't, you noticed the name in the credits later on. But when Leia and Obi-Wan land on this planet, Mapuzo, and are basically trying to meet up with the Hajjaz Kumal Ninjiani's character from the last episode's contact for them. They run into this dude that kind of more or less kind of looks like a mole or like a weasel.
Yeah,
he looked like
I thought it was Seth Rogen.
Yeah, that's what my wife thought it was first too as well.
Yet again, I have to point out, you may be saying this episode wasn't that bonkers, guys. A beaver-toothed redneck alien driving essentially a yellow school bus with a Galactic Empire bumper sticker essentially on the back of it. Like, that was a thing that was in this episode, and it picked up Obi-Wan and Leia hitchhiking, and then picked up a bunch of stormtroopers
who were effectively useless, like all stormtroopers are.
It was essentially like Obi-Wan was getting a ride with like a trumper. It was so crazy to see like that sort of angle to it. And yeah, Zach Braff apparently voiced the character, which I thought too, Seth Rogen or maybe even like John C. Reilly. It's had that sort of feel to it.
I could see John C. Reilly. I did not read the credits. I didn't know it was Zach Braff, so that's a revelation to me.
Yeah. But now we got Donald Faison and Zach Braff within the Star Wars universe.
That's true. That's true.
Star Wars scrubs. Here we come.
Yeah. There we go. But yeah, now we just need John C. McGinley. There,
he can just play someone in the Empire. He's been military his whole life in movies.
Yeah, you could basically just be Dr. Cox, but part of the Empire.
Yep.
But now, like, what did you guys think about like this whole sequence with like Leia and Obi-Wan, like in their like cover story, like where Leia more or less takes over and like does like the whole backstory about like her being his dad, or her dad rather,
right.
And then like he slips up and calls her.
I thought
Leia.
that was an interesting character choice they made, having him slip up. It just, I don't know why, it just struck out to me as, again, strange, because he's so, I guess I held him in this regard, like he doesn't make mistakes, but clearly he's just a mistake-ridden guy.
Yeah,
I thought it was a great moment just for to continually be building Leia as even at a very young age, as someone who's very, while she doesn't know she's using the Force, she clearly is using the Force in terms of how she connects with people and how she kind of knows what's really ticking with them. Like she broke down her cousin viciously in the last episode. But yeah, I thought that was a very nice touch to have her come up with this cover story, because it ties directly to when we see Leia for the first time in A New Hope, and she's lying to Vader's face about what she's doing on the ship, you know, like, so I think that was a very nice character moment. And I think Vivian Lyra Blair as Leia, she's fantastic to me. She completely captures the character and what I imagine the character to be as a kid. So I really like their scenes together. And it's a nice reprieve from the rest of the episode, which is very dark. So I think it balances itself out with those moments.
Yeah. The thing I liked here too was like when he's telling the lie to the troopers, and later on she kind of questions Obi-Wan if he knew her real mother, and then he like even asks if he is her real dad, which I almost thought was like a subtle reference to, like, because I know there's like a section of like Star Wars fans that like wanted Padme and Obi-Wan to be together. So I almost wonder if it's like a slight, like, hey,
that was all really interesting, because it also, strangely enough, was making me think of the Return of the Jedi novelization, which in the Return of the Jedi novelization, it sort of flat out said that Owen Lars is Obi-Wan's brother. And here they talk about Obi-Wan essentially as a baby when he was taken from his family, and he says that he has flashes. He even uses the same terminology as that Leia uses in Return of the Jedi when Luke asks her about her real mother, and she says just flashes, really. And Obi-Wan says the same thing about what he remembers, but he does suggest that he may have had a brother. Right. And so to just dangle that out there is very interesting. That can't be coincidence.
Yeah, so, that definitely felt like putting bait on a hook for something there.
Totally. So I was intrigued by that. And I think they're also sort of, by introducing this idea, not that they even needed to, but it's like they're sort of kind of reintroducing elements from these novelizations and stuff. Because also in the novelization, Leia straight up tells Luke that, you know, her mother died when she was like 4 or something like that, which is different, obviously, from the canon that we know in the movies. So if Obi-Wan can remember these details about potentially having a brother and stuff, then you're almost building on the fact that in Return of the Jedi, Leia could also, even as a child, have these flashes of who maybe her mother was. So I thought that was a nice touch.
One thing I was just, my brain, when she goes, "Are you my father?" I just like expected him to burst out laughing, like, "Oh no, God, no!" Just like the comedic reaction, like a meme almost coming out of it. And then it was heartbreaking to listen to him tell his story, how he was taken and doesn't remember and like barely remembers, and it makes you rethink the Jedi way. Like
very much so. Yeah.
Especially with like what we know about like in Phantom Menace, how like Anakin is like 9 years old in that, and they say that he's already too old there. So like how old, and like when you were talking about Ahsoka a little bit earlier, with her being a baby, like how old are these prospective Jedi Padawans, like when they're taken? Are they just like straight up like 2-3 years old, close to like infants basically?
And going back to previous Obi-Wan episodes where Owen says you don't care if he's okay, you want to know if he's showing. So, you know, it sort of suggests that Jedi are kind of looking for Force sensitives to display some sort of talent at a very young age so they can then recruit them. And that's you know, that's of course always the thing with Luke and Leia, is they're allowed to kind of grow up their own way outside of that very strict dogma of the Jedi, and they get to sort of choose their moment of making a choice to sort of be a hero instead of being recruited unwillingly into it.
And then so like soon, like after this, Freck, which I guess is the name of Zach Braff's Zach Braff's character, they stop at a checkpoint and report with the troopers there, and like this whole kind of like shootout with Obi-Wan. Now for a second I almost thought like that, like he was like the probe droid didn't like actually read his face, and like if he hadn't shot it they would have been okay. But I think it did read his face because it was like red, right? So
and they said it transmitted it and all that.
Okay,
pretty sure.
But I thought like that whole scene was great, and then like that trooper falls off the tower like over the gate.
Oh my god!
Again, adding to the bonkers comment, I never thought I'd see that.
It's a man bisected by a laser fence.
I don't like. My whole family and my couch was like, "Holy crap! What just happened?"
Yeah,
because I was not expecting that. I was like, "Oh, it's just like lights. It'll just like fall through it."
Right.
But then what I thought was funny is that like Obi-Wan like shot it out so that they could. I was like, just walk around. There's like the whole.
That's what I thought he was gonna do. Was
just walk around. But I don't know if either of you saw it, but the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, that's what it reminded me of. And this is Star Wars Connection because Pedro Pascal. I think it was in one of the trailers too. Like they like are trying to climb over the fence, and then there's just like this wall that they could just walk around like 3 feet to the right.
Yeah, right.
So that's what I was thinking about during this right here. But And then this is where we get, speaking of Pedro Pascal again, this is where we get Tala Durith, who was his girlfriend, Lady Mistress on Game of Thrones. So we get more Game of Thrones here in a galaxy far, far away. And what's kind of interesting about this is that like she's an Imperial officer who's actually like defecting, who had joined up when she thought it was like the Empire was doing like good, and then more like slowly realized who like the Empire really was.
Sort of a Callus before Callus, a fulcrum kind of role.
Well, it's a good point, like you made, like because Obi-Wan tells Leia, like, your dad, he works for the Empire, but he's trying to do good. It's like, it's an interesting thing to think of Bail Organa as part of the Empire. I never put those two and two together until he said that.
Yeah.
It's basically kind of trying to take it down from the inside.
And we'll see more of that in Andor with Mon Mothma. She's going to be very much in the same position of, at one point being part of the Imperial Senate and making that decision to leave and, start the alliance. So I hope we see more of that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy Smith shows up again in that show too.
Oh yeah.
Well, Jimmy Smith is going to get miles out of this character.
Yeah, he's been in a ton of stuff so far. But Tala brings them Obi-Wan and Leia into like the nearby settlement where they like lay low for a few hours. Kind of shows them like this like safe house. And she talks to them at one point about working with Carlin Voss. Now that name seems familiar, and I feel bad that I don't remember why I recognize that name. But I'm gonna go to Adam here because I'm assuming that you remember.
Yeah, Quinlan Voss is a fellow Jedi Knight, and if I'm remembering this right, he started as just a background character in The Phantom Menace. You see him sitting at a table during the altercation between Jar Jar and Sebulba. He's just a cool looking guy in the background, and George decided at some point, let's make this guy like a Jedi. Like, I like how he looks. I want to, give him a backstory. And so Quinlan Voss became a character that was featured more in comics and stuff. And then he's actually named or referenced by name in Revenge of the Sith. When Anakin is late for, whatever briefing they're having about the Clone Wars, he comes into the meeting room and Kenobi tells him, Master Voss is leading his troops to Baz Pati or something like that. So he was referenced in the movies, and then he appeared in the Clone Wars. And as I recall, his arc, he's one of those characters like Asajj Ventress that unfortunately, because the Clone Wars was canceled, there were additional arcs planned for his character that didn't get made. And so Quinlan Voss and Asajj Ventress, they sort of, I guess, fell in love, and there's a book called Dark Disciple that tells sort of the end of their character arc. But yeah, a fun reference for people of not necessarily the expanded universe, but that ancillary material, comics and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm glad like they're like working more stuff like this into like these different shows and stuff. That's like a nice payoff, and for everyone that's like reading different stuff or just paying attention to things in different mediums and whatnot. But from there, that's where Vader shows up into the settlement, and now like like Kenobi and Leia are in there, like all of a sudden you like see like Kenobi almost like it made me laugh for a second just because it almost looked like he like was like reeling over, almost like he had like food poisoning or something. But it also then reminded me of like A New Hope, where it's like a presence I have not felt since.
Absolutely.
So it's like that whole bit, and then like that Vader could sense him there too, and that's why he was doing all that, like with just like force pulling people out of windows,
just killing everybody.
Okay, yet again, just absolutely bonkers. He snapped a dude's neck with the Force. He drug a lady over the ground with the Force. He was stalking Obi-Wan like Michael Myers through this like mining colony, you know, like he would pop up out of nowhere. Obi-Wan would be running. You could just almost imagine Vader just sort of walking like Jason or Michael, and then but still somehow always ending up in front of him. I loved the cinematography there by Chung Hoon, the cinematographer of like Stoker and Old Boy and The Handmaiden. Really elevated the horror in those sequences. I truly felt that Vader was this terrifying killer. You know, it's interesting that if you look at Vader as a character in the movies and Anakin as a character in the movies, like Anakin's fall is really the darkest thing he ever does. You know, killing the younglings is the worst thing that Vader ever does. And not to diminish that because it is terrible, but the Vader that we see in the original trilogy is much more of like a broken slave to Palpatine. You know, he's doing his master's bidding. Whereas here, I truly felt that Vader was kind of unleashed and was cruel and doing things that Anakin at his darkest would also do. So I really enjoyed the development there and the connection, and also the voice of Vader. Really interesting because now we're seeing, you know, reports that James Earl Jones is voicing the character again. However, if you look in the credits, there's absolutely some synchronization going on with that voice. And what I'm assuming they've done is more or less what they did with Mark Hamill in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, which is they had the actor read the lines and then they, you know, using the deep fake synthesizer technology, they were able to replicate that with, you know, clips of James Earl Jones from his vast catalog of work, you know, and rebalance it out to make him sound youthful again. Because as great as it was hearing him in Rogue One, I think you really could hear the age on his voice.
And I was listening for that in this to see if you could tell.
Whereas, man, like when he starts talking here, it's like, whoa, that's Darth Vader. The
one thing I was as you're talking, because I just remember through some DVD commentary of some kind that hearing that there exists an audio track from the original movies of the dude playing Vader in the suit reading the lines and like everyone David laughing about it because he sounds nothing like James Earl Jones.
Yeah. He was like, I think he was Irish.
Yeah, I was gonna say Eastern European or Irish or something. It just makes me want to think, like, I want to hear that just because I want to hear it, but it just brings that memory back. Like on set, someone's saying these lines, so they don't know what it's going to sound like. Maybe they have voice modulators that can do it in real time. I don't know.
Yeah, he was English, so I think he may have had like maybe a Cockney accent or something. But
Vader with a Cockney accent.
Yeah.
All right, then.
I agree so much with your take on that, Adam, and I'm so happy that they made Vader this lurking, brute, not this like spry doing flips and all this crazy shit, because that's not who Vader was. Like, he is methodical. He is, he's emotional, but like he is intentionally doing what he's doing. It's not a reaction, and that's he could have, like, to see him sprinting after Obi-Wan would have just ruined it.
And that moment where Obi-Wan, you know, they're staring at each other and Obi-Wan's like, what have you become? And Vader says, I am what you made me. I mean, it's just like an incredible moment that it feels so organic and so obvious. It's kind of crazy that we hadn't thought about it before, but that would have to be a moment, you know, that Obi-Wan realizes not only is Anakin alive, but this is what's become of him. And Vader even tells him, you should have killed me when you had the chance. Not only saying that perhaps he's become more powerful, but also maybe a bit of a plea that I'm this walking nightmare. I'm this machine, that you should have finished me when you had the chance. So I thought that was really interesting. Added a lot of layers to that dynamic and what we know from A New Hope.
Yeah. And like, yeah, this whole like scene in the quarry with now, like I wasn't sure like how late into the show like Obi-Wan was gonna ignite his saber, like like if they were gonna like hold it off until like maybe like the last episode, or like to like really build like when he finally like ignites it, like he needs to, which I mean he did in this episode. He even like was reluctant to ignite it, like when he like you was like, dude, just light it up. But
right, with the like blast, like instead he was using a blaster and stuff.
Yeah, like this whole scene was cool too. I loved how they lit it, because it's like one of the few times in Star Wars where there's actually like the lighting from the saber like lighting the
I thought
scene
that too.
Because I mean, it was, I think only other times are like in Force Awakens.
That's really where it started, was Force Awakens, and I guess you get some of it in The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker as well. But yeah, it was very cool to see that sort of lighting on established characters like Vader and Obi-Wan for the first time.
I want to say there's a little bit in Attack of the Clones, just because of like Dooku cuts out the lights in that.
There is. It was just a bit of a different technique that they used. I think at that point they were actually just swinging lights at each other, which, it's more or less the same thing, but it wasn't quite as refined as what they have now for actual lightsabers. Yeah.
Now, like Obi-Wan's already been burned a few times in this season between Owen and then, that with the burn about with Vader to him about I am what you made me. But then
Vader knocked over a vat of like crystals. Yeah. And then he put his lightsaber to the crystals and set them on fire. Again, this is insane stuff. Then he dragged Obi-Wan like Two-Face style through it. Which I just thought was incredible. I mean, it's just like, that's the stuff like as a kid, like you're playing with toys or something, like that's something like you're dreaming about, is like these sort of confrontations. So it was just, it was mind boggling really to see it come to life.
Yeah. And it was like more or less basically making him experience what he experienced.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I'm already forgetting her name. Not who's with her name? With Leia.
Tala.
Yeah, if Tala hadn't like shown up to like shoot.
Yeah.
That like, well, I mean, that like he was fine because episode 4. But yeah, like if she hadn't been there to distract him, like I don't know like how much like worse that maybe would have got, or if I don't know, but that like whole thing was great. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm assuming this isn't the rematch duel that Kathleen Kennedy was talking about years ago. No, it's kind of like the
I can't imagine it is. No.
Yeah, like the build up, the precursor to which I'm probably assuming is what they're holding until like the last episode. Yeah. But yeah, that was crazy. And like you're saying, the cinematography of that scene was great with the fire and like the silhouette of Vader and that and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's sort of I use like pro wrestling terminology. Like in pro wrestling, you have these angles where you have multiple matches between people, and there's a rubber match where essentially the payoff, someone's gonna finally win the feud, and it's gonna, they're gonna go on to fight someone else. And this felt like, Obi-Wan won the first match. Vader wins this match pretty decisively. And so now we have to have the rubber match. They're tied at 1-1. We have to have the payoff, and that's Kenobi escaping Vader and sort of getting the upper hand in this next battle, to me. So we'll see how that plays out. But, I have to imagine we're going to get that shot, like the Rebel shot, where Vader's mask is cracked or cut, and we see Anakin's eye under there. We got to get something like that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. and to see what else is going to happen here. And then like this last little bit of like where the episode ends is Leia has basically headed off by herself to meet up with the ship that was to head out to Alderaan, and there she runs into the third sister, aka Reva, who's arrived first and killed the pilot there, and she tries to basically win Leia's trust, but Leia starts to turn around and run, and that's where the episode ends. So
yeah. Rev is a very interesting character. I don't know if you guys touched on this in the first 2 episodes, but my personal theory on Reva is that at the very beginning of the first episode, she's one of those Padawans.
Yeah, Mark brought that up last episode.
Yeah. And I feel like that's gonna be kind of part of her motivation for wanting Kenobi. Like, yes, she has this desire to sort of move up within the Empire, but I think really she maybe hates Obi-Wan for sending out that distress signal and sending everyone away from the Jedi Temple because they were stuck at the Jedi Temple and they needed help. So I'm wondering how that's going to play out. But I think her character is really interesting. And again, I'm still waiting to see what happens with the Inquisitor there. But the other character that pops up in this episode that I really liked was Ned B, the cargo droid.
I wanted him to hit someone with that hammer so bad.
He very much had like a Baymax type personality. He's like this gentle giant type character. And absolutely want to see him smash up some stormtroopers soon.
Yeah, I liked that trooper too. And for a second, I thought that was going to be, I saw O'Shea Jackson Jr. tweet something earlier. He's like, how did y'all like that episode? So I kept waiting for O'Shea Jackson Jr. to show up.
Yeah.
I thought he was like, maybe he voiced that droid, but then the droid didn't talk. So
right.
He'll get his voice before the series is over. You watch.
Yeah, I think he shows up next episode. I think he's sort of the next link in the chain of trying to get Leia back to Alderaan. But yeah,
definitely looking forward to it. We're gonna have to wait a little bit longer than we did between these first 3 episodes until we get part 4.
Yeah,
but it's already halfway over.
I know, it's crazy.
It hasn't even been out for a week yet. But so we're gonna wrap up the show for this week. We want to thank you, Adam, for coming on with us and talking with part 3 of the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
But everyone that's listening, you can leave us a review on the podcast catcher of your choice if it allows you to do so. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, helps us out a lot. You can follow the show on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, all the places, just by looking for HoldoPod and Hold a Maneuver podcast on YouTube. And then you can follow us individually on all those places. For me, you can just search my first and last name, Mark Vibert, MarcVibbert. Mike?
Same. I'm at Michael Soren. Last name not spelled the way you think. It's SAWRAN, and then there's an underscore at the end. I mainly post about things I'm uploading to YouTube. So if you want to know when I'm dropping stuff, follow me on YouTube or follow me on Instagram and Twitter.
There you go. And then Adam?
And I'm at Adam Frazier, and that's Frazier. And I write a column called Star Wars Bits for Slash Film that comes out every Friday. So I've got a lot to write about this week. So that's going to be what I'm doing for the next day or two.
And I'll put Adam's link tree in our show notes, so you can check that out, and all Poppin' Pizza and First Showing and all the stuff.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And then you can check out our editors' Instagram and Twitter for Vactor, VACTOR. And then you can email us at holdopod@gmail.com. But as always, we are grateful to George Lucas for creating the Star Wars universe.
Like the maker. Ooh. I'm never going to be able to do C3PO. You realize this.
Thanks, everybody.
Till next time.